Hello to everybody out there, familia, community. We just come together for 30 minutes, occasionally on Friday, just to come together and to talk about different topics. Today we're going to talk about parenting and
Yeah.
parenting maybe trauma. Yeah, I'm Jessica Plazatiani Ochoa Samaripa.
I am Manuel Samaripa.
And it's good to come together. As always, it's good to come together, especially in these times when we can be isolated and apart. So we're going to spend this time with you.
Absolutely. So I think, we try to cover and talk about things that affect our people, affect our community, affect who we are part of who we are. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about today was parenting and how that looks like within our culture, within our community, how that might be different, how that might be similar, and really just kind of open up a conversation about it. We have a few thoughts, that we like to share, but if anyone else has any thoughts, of course, please just type in your comments, however you'd like to participate.
Yeah. So we don't like to come from a deficit perspective, right? Like, oh, all the traumas that we have as parents, as families, and like Dr. Samaripa always says, you go by Manuel, right?
Yeah.
Like he always says, there's a both end, right? So both, we have strengths in our community, we have strengths in our family, we have strengths in ourselves that we've been passed down. And we also recognize the things influencing our families, our wellness, and the external factors and internal factors of the struggles that we have, right? The traumas that we've been passed down, the intergenerational traumas. Right. And of course that affects the way we parent, right? Again, not coming from a deficit model, like, what are we doing wrong? What's wrong with us? No. And to support us toward liberation, toward healthiness, toward wellness for our families. That's why we get into these topics.
Right, absolutely.
So one thing that we want to recognize as families is that we do have intergenerational trauma. We do have passed down traumas. And that resides within us, and it can affect negatively sometimes the ways in which we parent. And what we're trying to do is move, maybe be aware of our thinking, be aware of our internal struggles, to move in a direction continually, not that we're not already doing it, but a direction that is supportive of each other, supportive and simply moving in love, moving in gratitude, moving in wellness, moving in peace, and moving in support within our families, which is sometimes easier said than done.
And I think one of the things that we always start with is, we've heard it, I think, amongst ourselves, and it's part of always the conversation that our community, our culture is very family oriented, familismo, family centered. We value each other. We value our family. We put our family first in a lot of ways, and so we have that strong connection, and at the same time, there's a lot going on in our families that then we see. Sometimes we've seen our parents behave in ways that aren't healthy, and sometimes we see that within ourselves.
And of course we're going to see that within our children, and that can trigger us, to insisting that they handle things better than they yet have the skills to, and then we can reflect on ourselves that we can't handle those things so great all the time. Why is the expectation so much more intense? And the answer is a positive thing. We want the best for our children. We want them to do better. We want them to succeed. That's why we go hard. That's why we push hard. We want them to be able to handle and at the same time, that may not be what they need in their struggles at that time. So Kiko wrote here, I've learned that we have to allow us to explore, discover, and implement the learning we obtain from our hijos. Very good point. And parental knowledge that we have gained to introduce to our growing children.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like a two-directional model, right? We're guiding them, and in their, child wisdom, they hold up that mirror to us as parents, and they show us who we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that can be challenging. As we know, we need to be the stronger guiding force as the grown-ups, right? That they need to be able to trust and count on, which is a huge responsibility. Sometimes no one's showing up, right? It's just us, and we're the leaders of our family. So if there's not enough resources, if it's hard to come by a healthy meal, if it's hard to maybe not get frozen, depressed or anxious, or maybe, trauma responses that we might have. And it's hard to move through those things. And like I always say, it's a revolutionary act to raise a healthy family if you are Chicano, if you're a person of color. Again, with all the external forces that affect our family's well-being and affect our ability to provide food, being that we have been disconnected from the land in which we can grow our own food, and on and on and on to those external factors.
Yeah, no, and so I think one of the things that we struggle with, as parents, is having this strong familismo piece of our traditions, our culture, where we center everything, and then at the same time we have some unhealthy patterns that we see happen in our families and amongst ourselves, and then we try to look at, well, what's going on within our families, and we try to look at what's going on in our culture and our community. And I think those are things that we need to change. We need to break those patterns. And I think Isidro here on Facebook talks about the fact that it's true. Sometimes you need outside, perspectives, outside eyes. It's hard to see when you're in the middle of it. And one of the things that's hard to see is that these patterns that have been passed down, this intergenerational trauma, they are patterns that have developed, as a result of the traumas and the experiences that our people have lived and have survived. And so we're responding at some point to the way we're being treated, to the way sometimes we have to take care of our kids during times when, we couldn't really rely on any of the society's institutions to protect us in any way. So our families
still can't in a lot of ways.
And so we develop these patterns of responding, of parenting, and so those are patterns that we've been used that aren't always the healthiest patterns because of situations of oppression and discrimination. And so they are not patterns that are inherent in our cultural values. Right?
That's important. You always say that. Say that. Right. Like, unpack that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, I think that's important because they become intertwined with how we see our culture. We say, our culture doesn't do this, or our culture keeps a lot of secrets. We're messed up, and our culture, and it's become part of a pattern. But what it is the intergenerational trauma patterns. So those negative, unhealthy patterns that work against our familismo don't come from our culture. They're not part of our cultural origins. They're not part of our cultural values. And so we need to separate those pieces.
But what are they then? Because we see, sometimes that messed up behavior. If they're not from our culture, what are they?
They're from the patterns of oppression that we've had to face, where then our families and our parents responded to those that oppression, that discrimination, that trauma in ways that they knew how to. So you don't only have the traumas of our parents that, generations ago would go out there and work and be treated really terribly, horribly. I could say also today, but, but very like, and then they bring that anger and that frustration home with them.
That
That susto, right?
PTSD from a lot of lived traumas.
And so then that becomes part of those patterns that so we know our community still fights with that exclusion, with not being really fully included in this society, right? With open arms. So that hasn't changed. So we still we need to kind of stay a little secluded in those family circles and those parenting circles. So we continue to repeat certain patterns that aren't as healthy, that are traumatic, that then we see, why do our people still continue to act in this way? Well, it's because of those patterns that were passed down. It's because we didn't and still do not have full liberation, inclusion. We still don't have full access to healthcare, education,
Good credit, home loans,
so we
car
have
loans.
right. We still are dealing with all of these issues. So that comes out in the most intimate, the most primary ways of behaving, and
And
that's
our most
raising
intimate
children.
relationships, which is raising children
Uh-huh.
usually, and they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
They can't,
Right.
match you back. So we have to take more care with our behavior, with those trauma responses. Because you're saying
Absolutely.
then that's our culture, what has been our culture's response to these traumas. Not that we're messed up, inherently,
Culturally.
intrinsically,
Right.
culturally, but that it's been a response
Mm-hmm.
to these systems. Yeah, and you have said that before about families like, hey, my family is messed up, or that family is messed up. That you mean that's how their trauma looks, and it ain't pretty.
Right.
Or even an individual like kids, adolescents going through the school system that are, people would say, like messing up. That is their trauma response in their life, and that's what trauma looks like on that kid, on that person.
Right. Absolutely.
And then what do they do? They end up in juvie possibly, or they end up believing that they're bad because they've done some messed up stuff, instead of having that healing that needs to go along with that, healing that trauma. Because kids are people just like us, right? It
Right.
doesn't escape them.
Right. Absolutely.
So we're trying to move toward liberation. We're having these conversations not to be down on ourselves, right? And
Right.
oh, everything's wrong. No, but to not be afraid to look at that obsidian mirror, to look at that hard stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and to make those shifts, right?
Right.
I
Absolutely.
have, we could talk about a tool that I have for, considering our thoughts, considering the way we our first initial responses to our children. And then I also wanted to talk about creating the Ometeo with every interaction. But
Yeah. No, I mean, I was, in line of, in line with everything that we're saying. I was, also wanting to expand in our parenting experiences, that part of what we know that all parents need, and particularly parents in our community, is we need support. We need support to continue this journey in a healthy way. We need support from people that we trust, from people that we love, and people that love us in a healthy way, right? And and a lot of the times, because of that trauma, because of that passed down trauma, because of these patterns of behavior, because of the notion that we kind of get infected, I think, with this notion this larger U.S. society, very kind of individualistic, and this idea that you talk
yeah,
about, which is the idea of knowing. Like, people a lot of the time, they talk as if they know. Like, I know more than you. I know more
mm,
than them, and we talk as we know, instead of trying to talk in a place from a place of curiosity or a place of collaboration. It's like, no, do this because I know,
mm,
right? And to do that because I know, and I know this, and that is always something where when you take that stance, you're always blocking out somebody else, and it's almost always oppressive, and it's definitely
That's
ego
true.
boosting. It's definitely like coming from you. So
Man,
who do we lean on for support? We're proposing that we need to start learning how to support each other
as
as
parents, as
parents, as other
families,
Raza parents and Chicano parents and Latino
you are
parents.
opening up so many things right now with what you're saying. That makes me think of trusting our own voice, right? Believing that our own voice is valid.
Yeah.
When you have that imposing person saying like, no, you're doing this wrong, do
Mhm.
this, do this.
Right.
And you're also making me think of deep listening as as a ritual almost,
Yeah.
deep listening to our children, deep listening to our dualidades, our partners,
Yeah.
to our family members, and finding the ways to also be heard, or maybe protect yourself by not sharing information if you know you're going to get attacked, because our networks, our support systems may not be that supportive sometimes, and you need to both, again, see the good things that can be grown. We always talk about separating the strengths from the traumas, right? There may be good things in those family relationships that you can grow, and also there may be some areas in which you need to protect yourself and not share information if you know it's going to bring you judgment, but find somewhere safer to share that and get that feedback. Um, Parenting is very challenging, and I mean, man, I want to say again, like sometimes you find yourself alone, right? That leader, and in these situations, and like you're saying, if you don't have a supportive network, again, more challenging to build that strong base. You're trying to build that base of gratitude, that base of wellness for your family, that base of love, that base of harmony, right? And so again, trusting your voice, trusting your own experience, your lived experience, your
Yeah.
children's lived experience, because each of us is a universe, and your children are their own universe. And if you practice deep listening with them as a ritual,
Mhm.
just deep listening, no need to respond, no need to correct, no, just deep listening, you will build that safe place of trust between you and your child. And when that happens, no matter what they go through, what they've been through, what they maybe now feel safe enough to tell you that they have done that has caused them pain because they did it, something terrible or something that has happened, you will have built that. I call it, what one of our concepts is build that ometeo, which is two energies coming together creating.
Mhm.
We're building an ometeo with you right now, I'm talking with you. We're building
Mhm.
an ometeo with each other. We're creating that energy. This is what one of our elders says. And building that ometeo with your children, being aware of what you're creating when you speak with your children.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Just just wanted to say also just real quick to acknowledge everyone that's out there and watching and
I
joining
think I
us.
saw
Thank you.
Daniel.
Yeah, and hey Dan, I see you on Instagram if you're still listening. I'm not sure. Um, and thank you all for the comments. The comments here on Facebook.
Personal reflection takes effort, and putting biased pride and ego aside.
Yeah.
Isidro, thank you for that. Also, Gerardo says an almost a natural response to an unnatural environment.
Yeah, probably the trauma
Yeah.
responses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if you guys have anything you want to just, you want to share or you want to ask or you just want to comment on, please do so. We like to have these kind of just, 30-minute chats.
Be together,
to
right?
just hang out with y'all.
Familia, be together, support each other.
Yeah.
We're parents too, and we have found ourselves in the darkest of dark, and in the lightest of light. The joys that only children can bring, and our traumas are thrown up in our face, right?
Yeah.
So again, the purpose of us getting together and talking about these things is to continue to move towards self-determination, towards self-advocacy for our families, because if you're a parent, it's a social justice position. If you're a parent of a brown child, if you're
Always.
a parent of
Always.
a Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, child, it's a social justice position, and that may
You
not be
will
so
be
easy
challenged.
if you feel depressed, if you're
That's
feeling
right.
anxious, if you're feeling triggered, if you're feeling unsupported if you're feeling like your lived experience is not being validated externally, and all kinds of battles within ourselves, right? So still though, if we can create that base, that strong base with our kids, and heal ourselves and bring a healing space for them
Mm-hmm.
through meals, through time, through movies, and not be unrealistic with what we can do, you know. Sometimes intentionally not parenting, giving them a break from all the lessons, you know, like
Right.
let them be. However, be aware of what you're dealing with. For example, we know if we let our youngest one, like, you know, we're tired, we just can't do a good job. I've noticed him starting to yell. You know what? Let him just watch TV and be on video games. And if we do that, guess what else we know? 2 hours later,
We're
he's
still gonna have to deal with it.
he's
Yeah.
gonna pitch fits. That's what happens. Why are we gonna pretend that's not gonna happen?
Mhm.
He's gonna pitch fits. He's gonna maybe say mean stuff. He's gonna be possibly disrespectful because being on the screens that much, you know, kind of
Overstimulating. We know
freaks
that.
him out.
Yeah.
And we can't expect him to be respectful, well behaved. Like, we know what's coming, and we have to prepare ourselves to
Mhm.
guide, to maneuver in a healthy way. We can't be like, go be on screens for a couple hours, and then he comes back a wreck, and then we're like, how dare you be? You know, we knew it was coming.
Right.
He
We have
can't.
to see the
He just
bigger
can't.
picture. We have to see the whole picture. We have to know that, you know, the decisions we're making in a certain moment, because we need you know, some space or some time. We have to know what's coming afterwards. We can't pretend like we're going to be surprised, but we try to rely on each other for that, and we think we're really important to try to find other parents to try to rely to be supportive with each other on that. Not try to outdo each other, not
Yes.
try to always be the one that knows
Right.
more, the parents that know
Right.
more of that, or
Yes.
just, you know,
Deep listening as a skill, as a
right.
sign of respect for somebody that's vulnerably coming to you and say, hey,
Mhm.
I am messing up my family, you know, maybe I'm drinking too much, or I can't stop yelling, or oh, when my kid does this, it just, oh, you know, and
Right.
they, you know, maybe need help, maybe they need to reach out to maybe a professional, or some bigger help that you can give them. But the deep listening instead of the judgment, I mean, you don't have to
Always.
pretend it's not happening. Like,
Right.
okay, I hear you. You know, you're
Right.
causing harm in your family. You know, I hear that, and you know, I'm here if you want to talk, and maybe if we can look for someone to support you.
Mhm.
That's the way we can support each other. Too long, we've been, again, what's the root? Love. We want to be there for each other. Hey, you're messing up. You know, what are you doing? Because we want to snap them out of it. That's what we do to our kids too.
Mhm.
However, it ain't that simple. If they could just snap out of it, they
would.
It's
They would.
patterns of behavior. It's deep patterns of thinking. It's
Right.
passed down trauma, you know,
Mhm.
even in our DNA. And you know, to expand our minds a little bit, you know, even from colonialism, still that trauma, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, so to, you know, those rash judgments may not be
Absolutely.
the safe space that they need to do better for their family, to change in a better way. I'm sure that the shame and the guilt that they feel for themselves is more, as always is, more on that person than we could ever put on them. And again, why
Yeah.
would we want to, right?
I mean, I think going back to some of the basic concepts that are part of, you know, our ancestral culture, even for many people, is the idea of the circle. And so, if we think of ourselves in a circle with other parents, you know, that's what we want. We want to see each other and hear each other, and we all bring different experiences and different wisdoms, but we don't want to try to put ourselves above anybody or below anybody,
Mm-hmm.
or be in a line like, oh, they've been parents longer, so they know more. We haven't, so we know less. I mean, there's definitely wisdom with experience.
There is. There's
But-
respect for elders for sure.
But the highest form of wisdom with all your experience, like if you've been parents longer, is knowing that you don't know everything, right? So you wouldn't use that experience to you know, be to impose what you think is best on younger parents.
You can offer.
Right? You can offer.
Gerardo brings up a good point. More often than not, what you're willing to offer is not what is wanted. That's true. And if they're not in a place to receive,
It's true.
then it's not time to give it, right? Of course, that's different if the kids are suffering, you know, if they're crying a lot and you can tell they're in distress, they're not getting what they need. There needs to be some stronger, investment there, stronger things to happen there. But if it's just, you know, your typical Chicano family making their way through all of these different things and facets and aspects and the whole universe of what it is to be a family in and of itself, then why not we try and support each other, right? And hopefully be a part of a supportive network for ourselves as well. And to recognize when we're depressed and when we're anxious and when we can't do a great job and when we need to step back and to know what's real. You know, if we take some time out and let our kid watch screens for 2 hours, he's going to come back all jacked up.
Yeah, we have to know what's real. And I, you know, like you always say, we have to be aware of what we're dealing with in this experience that we have as parents, because if we are brown parents of brown children, then, as you say, you're always taking a social justice position, because you will be challenged. You'll not only from, you know, our own community, but definitely from doctors, teachers,
without a doubt,
you know, employers, other parents, you know, white parents.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
They think
And
they got the whole
so-
parenting thing wrapped up in a.
So anytime you advocate, you're not just advocating, or anytime you need to stay steady in what you believe, you know, you're also it's a social justice position always. And I know you wanted to share something.
Oh yeah. I just want to say too, it all comes down to those simple things. If we can, you know, encourage ourselves and bring ourselves back to it, you know, harmony in the family if we can, right? Not that we're afraid of conflict, we're not. And we know it's not perfect, but the goal is to be harmony, for there to be love there that everybody feels, you know, for there to be support there that everybody feels, for there to be gratitude there. And I know that's not easy when you got a lot of things on top of you, you know.
Right.
But to try and move in those ways and in those directions and creating that ometeo with your words between you and your children. So one skill we learned from one of the therapists working with one of the children is being aware of your reactions, your initial thoughts, your snap judgments. Thinking traps is what the therapist called them, thinking traps. She's a psychologist, and this is a really good thing. So this can be a takeaway that we can practice in our families. She named them for the kids, so this is perfect. You can tell them it's right? I know. It's negative. What can be her name? Negative Nidia.
Yeah, negative media.
Negative Nidia. Okay, and then so that's, you know, your snap judgment is going to the negative, right? And the kids can learn from this too. So if you're just jumping to conclusions, right, without really knowing, we can call it, instead of jumping jack, we should call it, okay, we'll stick with jumping jack for that one. And then, and the other one is psychic Suki, where you think you know what the other person's thinking or what their motivation is, you know. Instead of making those rash judgments, you can be like, well, you know what, I be curious, right? I guess I need to find out a little bit more about what's happening, or why is my child doing that? I'm assuming they're being disrespectful. I'm assuming that they're being bad. I told them not to do that, you know. Well, we don't psychically know.
Right.
And truly, often, more in my 22 years of parenting kids under the age of 10 so far, I cannot believe how many times I'm curious about why they did what they did.
It's different.
That it is not what I assumed. So that blew my mind for a decade before I started to realize, like, holy crap, I assigned this motivation for that kid's behavior. I decided they were doing it to, you know, because I told them not to, or to get to me. And it wasn't. They had this other, not that they're saints, they're not going to be. Why would we expect them to be? All of our journeys are messy. But anyway, so I'm not assuming, psychic, Suki. And what was the fourth one? It was negative
Something about
media, jumping Jack, psychic, Suki. Oh, this is good for our people, man. The not the destructive.
Oh yeah, disaster thinking.
Disaster Daryl, where you immediately, oh my God, he didn't do his homework. Now he's gonna fail the class. I mean, instead of jumping to those disastrous thinking. So those four are good things to just be aware of our thinking, and they can be practice being aware of theirs. Maybe we're falling into these thinking traps, which don't lead us towards a harmonizing way of seeing each other and making positive assumptions of each other.
Yeah.
We could expand on that more, but we're out of time, so I know I went too fast with that.
That was good. I think we just wanted to share some of these thoughts, the ideas with you all.
Just little planting seeds towards our wellness, towards our liberation as a people, for our families, towards our abundance.
Yeah, please always, those of you out there, continue to follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can always see what we have coming up from the Institute at our website, which is razapsychology.org. But thank you all for just kind of joining and being with us here today for this nice 30-minute chat that we try to do every Friday. Well, not every Friday, every so often on a Friday.
Well, let's just keep trying to stay connected, right, with each other and support each other. And reach out when we need that support.
All right.
Especially as parents.
Thank you all so much. Until next time.